Are you ready? Stand by.
Hey everybody, I'm Dave Hartman and welcome to The Three Gun Show, the world's largest three-gun podcast. This is a special anniversary episode of the podcast. That's right, The Three Gun Show is 4 years old as of the day this podcast drops, which is Monday, April 1st, 2019. So this week's podcast is 2 days early, but next week we'll be back on our regular schedule. In the meantime, enjoy this podcast with Reuben Aleckson and Adam Maxwell of Vortex Optics, where we discuss the perfect zero for your rifle. That's right, the perfect three-gun zero. Guys, welcome back to the show. It's the next day, day 2, Vortex Optics. We have a very special podcast to talk about here.
Yeah, it's going to be great.
And we're on day 2 of a 5-day tour in Wisconsin for Dave.
5-day tour.
A 5-day tour.
Yep, that sultry voice is Reuben Aleckson. The first one you heard is Adam Maxwell. And what better place than Vortex Optics to discuss something that Reuben and I have had in development for, what was it, probably 7 months now? What was I here in July last time?
You were here in July, yep.
Okay, so when I was here in July last.
You were here in July.
Yeah. Let's see. I just came from a Jeff Kirkwell Memorial match, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I shot the UH1 there. We shot the shoot off. Worked out really well. I was just coming off the Colorado three-gun championship where I shot patrol. So Reuben is like, hey, man, you want to go do some long-range shooting out at the farm? And I'm like, yeah, but I'm going to need to borrow a scope. Do you know anyone who has one?
Nope.
Yep.
So
we made some phone calls, did some research, found a couple in the local area.
So we I'm sorry, you got to take that off. There you go. We stopped by Reuben's house, grab a scope straight off of one of his rifles, and he puts it on we put it on my rifle. We head out to the range, but now we don't know, different rifles. We don't know what's up, different ammo, stuff like that. So what we did was we stumbled upon the perfect zero.
Well, and when we say we stumbled upon it, this is something that I had been starting to research, and so when we popped the optic, I wasn't really allowed to talk about it, but when we popped the optic on to your rifle, it was zeroed on one of my rifles, and if you have a high quality AR, a lot of the times the alignment's very similar. So when you take the scope off of one on a quick release mount, put it on another, it's going to be very close.
And so we did that. We get to the range, and you're like, well, and sounds like there's a little more to the story here, but so we find the first steel target, and we're like, we'll just get a hasty zero here. Yep. Turned out it was 140 yards.
Exactly 140 yards.
Exactly 140 yards. And then from there, we punched in the data into Streetlock, and it lined up for the basically the most frequent targets that we see in three-gun.
Yeah, it was, I think, a pretty significant discovery.
Yeah.
For our sport.
The 140-yard zero.
The 140-yard zero, huh?
Yeah, and so I normally shoot MRAD, an MRAD reticle, the VMR2.
Milliradians.
Yeah, exactly. So what Reuben had there was the JM reticle. Ah. And so with that 140-yard zero, it was incredible just to, we had like a sea of steel out in front of us because it's out at the Vortex farm, and just ding, ding, ding,
it's
ding.
just the language of love.
Super quick, super fast acquisition, and like the hash marks lined up perfectly for the most frequent targets that we see in three gun. It was incredible.
Yeah. So really, what Dave and I wanted to talk about is, we've been doing some of this Q&A stuff over the last couple of days and going over some of the really frequently discussed things on forums and on talks, and what distance do you zero at for three gun is something that comes up all the time. And what better place than here at Vortex, where we've got indoor range and we've got an outdoor shooting facility to really dive deep into this stuff. We've got Kellen Beauchesne is a test engineer here, and he's been really like trying this out on a lot of different platforms, and Adam and I are going to matches a lot, so this is something that we've been really diving into as well.
Running the whole gamut of barrel lengths too.
Yeah, and that's really where this, what I would call breakthrough, really shines.
The rubber really hits the road.
You know what's incredible is how long Three Gun has been around, and
nobody's figured it out.
No, usually you'll find like a 50 to 100 yard zero if people are going to like Hornady Zombies in the Heartland. It's like a 25 yard zero or 30 yard zero because they're worried about those clays, but no one's ever exceeded.
I mean, there's a lot of an institutional inertia around where to zero these rifles because they started life as military rifles. So most of the people, a lot of people initially came to the sport from the military, and they're like, "Oh yeah, they beat this into my head. This is how we do this." And nobody really moved off that. It's a matter of like, oh well, this always worked before, so I don't really like math, so I'm just gonna stay where I'm at.
Yeah,
It's true.
And another thing, when we're looking at different reticles and different shooting methods, a lot of times what you'll see with guys that shoot like a mill reticle or an MOA based reticle, as opposed to a BDC, is you'll see guys that will do a 100 yard zero, just because a lot of times their hash marks will line up more cleanly. But if you're shooting a BDC, it's almost always expected that you're going to do a 200 yard zero because a lot of BDC reticles are built with the the subtensions working out to 300, 400, 500, and 600. But every time that we change loads or we change barrel lengths, that kind of gets screwed up.
And so for me, with an 18-inch rifle, and I had a 77 grain Sierra Match King projectile. It's going about 25. What was that?
It's like the perfect bullet.
Choice. Yep.
Yeah.
25, 57 feet per second. And
What grain bullet?
77?
Okay. Yep.
So I'm looking at the with my 140 yard zero, which I've been running ever since.
Yeah.
You signed that NDA, right?
Yeah, and I feel bad because I talk about the 50 yard zero a lot.
Yeah.
But I did have to sign the NDA. So
I mean, it's proprietary.
right,
Not anymore.
we're gonna give this to the world.
Yep.
All right, so brace yourselves. So with my 140 yard zero, my first hash mark is 290, which is very close to 300. And then I go 405 at 2 mil, 508, 603, 691, 773, 851.
One more time. I'm bad with numbers.
It's cool. So I'm just going to keep it within 600 yards, which is where we live in Three Gun.
Yeah.
All right. So 1 mil is 290. 2 mil is 405. 3 mil is 508. And 5 mil is 603.
That's like absolutely
Excuse me,
as
4 mil,
close as you could expect it to be.
Yeah. Yeah, and then for all the intermediate targets, you just bracket in there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that was with 77 grain ammo out of a 18-inch barrel.
Yes.
70 degrees, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
So what I did to show and further show the versatility of this zero distance is I zeroed using 60 grain Hornady VMAXs, which is a very popular load. It's something that we use here at Vortex a lot to create like an average ballistics curve for a lot of popular cartridges that people will shoot in the sport. So like the JM1 reticle was developed using a 60 grain VMAX. So with 140 yard zero, the first thing I'm going to do, Dave, is I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to move, and I've got a perfect zero at 100 yards. So if you're shooting a plate rack or shooting smaller targets, I'm actually zeroed at 100 yards again. And to anyone who wants to verify this, I'm running both iStraylock Pro and Shooter Ballistics. So using
That's like the Bloods and the Crips of ballistic calculators.
yeah, it is really, but you
can't
got to
really
cross.
get them to agree on much.
You got to cross verify, okay?
Yeah.
And so
It's real journalism.
running a 60 grain VMAX out of a 8 twist 18-inch barrel at 3,100 feet per second. Okay, it's a
It's all in.
it's a pretty standard, like widely accepted velocity range and grain weight.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I go out now and moving out from there. So running the JM1 to show how you can use this zero distance on a BDC reticle. Like I said before, I've got a 100-yard zero and 140-yard zero. But I'm looking at my hash marks, which are going to be 280 for the first one,
Okay.
390 for the second one, 495, and 600 on the money.
That's amazing.
That is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I can't believe how well it works in so many different areas too.
Yeah, it's almost like one of those things where you can't. It's like a recipe that you can't screw up.
Yeah. Yeah. It's and then you sit there and you think like, gosh, how did we not see this before? It seemed like it was right there the whole time.
Yeah. Absolutely. It's like, and you've been executing the same drops the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like chewing the reticle to the trajectory.
Yep.
It's just a subtle adjustment.
It's basically asking the bullet what it wants and then giving it to the bullet.
Yeah. It's really, and that's what rifle shooting is. It's really an interpersonal relationship with the bullet.
Mm-hmm. It's true.
Yeah, Adam, you've been using the 140-yard zero since I brought it to you after Dave and I's range session. You want to talk a little bit about your findings?
Yeah, mine's a little bit more preliminary, because we spent most of our time working with common barrel lengths, so I kind of got voted off the island until the end. So
Because of the shorty.
yeah, yeah, because of the shorty. But it's similar with the shorty. I've kind of arrived at 11.875 inches on the barrel.
That is specific.
Yeah, it's a NATO spec that Primary Weapons Systems uses on the Mark 111.
What velocity are you typically running with, like the 60 grain, 55 grain?
2751.
Okay,
is pretty much where I'm at. Standard deviations.
Well, I tell you what, so I'm wearing a UH1 shirt today.
And you really pull it off.
Thanks, buddy. I like this thing. So I actually looked up the UH1 reticle, and man, it even works for 1X, the 142-yard zero. You're looking at like a 66-yard and 142-yard zero.
Yep.
And then everything else you just hold up or down.
Yeah. Yep. Because you lost about, what did you lose, like 3-4 yards going from your load to Reuben's on the first hash? Weren't you like 290?
Oh, we were using different reticles, but yeah, mine was 290.
Oh, okay. So you're 290, and so you're the mill radian.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
You were the JM.
Yep.
I shoot the mill most of the time. I'm losing a little bit of velocity, but I'm still at like.
You're saying 2751, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll plug this in for you here quick, and you can give people the exact numbers.
I tell you what, on that UH1, when you're looking at the little diamond that it has in the bottom, the CQB 0.
Yeah.
In the bottom of the reticle.
A lot of people sleep on the Delta.
A lot of people sleep on the Delta.
Wow.
Such
inspiration.
Dang, that was profound. Anyway, so that also becomes your 923-yard hold.
I often call it the Hail Mary triangle.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Because at the bottom of that is like 1,011 yards.
Right.
Or, 1,111 yards. So
yeah.
Even more.
And it was funny because I put this, using this 140-yard zero, I put this on my 7.5 inch. PDW while we were out at the Extreme last year, and the stage that I was at, one of the targets we had was 393 or 933.
933.
Mm-hmm.
You just covered the target with that triangle.
Just tip of the triangle, press the trigger,
send it out.
Ding for days, son.
I like it.
7.5 inch barrel on XM 193. I don't know what velocity that is because it would probably wreck our chronograph.
That's just incredible. It's just, another testimonial for the 140-yard zero.
Oh, okay. All right. So, yeah, I mean, like
So you've got Street Lock pulled up right now.
yeah, I'm Street Lock special, so Reuben helped me a little bit.
Cool.
So my first hash on the mill reticle with 11875 is 279.
Man,
That is super close to 300.
it's so close.
I mean, close enough.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
for shooting
Yeah.
a 4-minute target, and then from there it's 370, 445, 507, 561, 608, and 649. So yeah, I mean,
There's data there. There's points there that are useful for almost every match we go to.
Yep. Yeah, I can't tell you, like, over the last 3 years of traveling around shooting matches, how many targets have fallen within that range. Like, I shot a 405-yard target one time, and the very same match, I shot a 430-yard target, and both those targets would have been easily achievable with this zero.
well, yeah, and everyone, you know, over the years, everyone always kind of talks. You know, everyone's got their own dope card, right? I mean, how many hours spent in the car with Jake Latola going down to the Blue Ridge? You know, he's just nerding out on this list that he made, and I couldn't get over, like, Reuben and I were talking one day, like, I mean, the numbers are very, very similar.
Right.
So one day we just plotted it out on a whiteboard, just started drawing out the arc, and you know, that's kind of where we zeroed in on, like, this intersecting point for all these different velocities, different barrel lengths, different bullets that kind of hovered around this one spot.
And 140 yards is a sweet spot.
Yeah,
Wow.
and then we had to put it down on the range, you know, because the book learning only goes so far. You gotta.
Sure. Well, now I'm still, you know, laughing that Reuben had me fooled into thinking that it was a happy accident that we parked the truck 140 yards from the target.
Yeah, it was just a flat spot.
Yeah, it's one of those things where you're like, "Oops, did you see that?" Like,
Yeah.
you don't want to give it all away, but
just hidden right there in plain sight.
you need to kind of start the hype without starting the hype.
Right. So, all right. Well, going forward, like, if someone wants to try out 140-yard zero, let's talk about next steps. Like, how do they get that zero in their life?
Well, you start by putting the target at 140 yards.
Okay. So you need to find a bay with more than 100 yards.
Yeah.
Well, and here's the beauty of that, really. Okay, and not to interject, Adam, but if you have a 100-yard range, you zero it at 100, and it's also going to be zeroed at 140.
Wow.
yeah,
you
just
just
the
blew my mind.
the way the trajectory is arced at that particular point. Like, it's a very flat part. It's almost at the zenith of the curve
Okay.
Yeah.
for that initial acceleration out of the barrel.
Interesting. Wow. Okay, so I've got my 140-yard zero. Now, for me, it took a little bit to get used to, mostly because I had to carry around 2 zeros in my Street Lock, one to show people that I was still using the 50-yard zero, and then one for my actual data, which was 140 yards at that point. Have you guys found any problems in switching to the 140-yard zero?
You know, just like any new gear, new method that you try in the sport, you're going to have to do a little bit of dry fire. You're probably going to want to put some reps up on Instagram. You're definitely going to want to get out to the range, you know, maybe one time before you shoot a major. And I think that's pretty good practice. Don't be excessive. You know, don't hit the range every day before you go to a major. But dry fire really is key when you're switching your zero distance. And so I think it really bears true to a lot of what we do. I mean, it's all in your head. You need to just make sure that you remember your new holds, and if you do that, you should be good to go.
Yeah. And I think once you get those new holds in your head and you're able to remember them, you're going to end up feeling them.
Yeah, and it almost comes back to instinct.
Yeah.
You know, using your natural point of aim. I mean, I don't know that we really even need those holds, because if you truly could connect with yourself and your ballistic calculator, you would be able to are you familiar with like traditional archery?
Yes.
Where they're not using any type of pin sights or anything like that.
Huge fan.
Like if I gave you a football and I said, throw that football at that person across the parking lot.
I don't need
like,
holds.
No, you know.
I'm
Just
you
gonna
know,
give it the full send.
Yeah.
well, I mean, you know exactly how hard to throw that
Caveman
football.
have a hold on his spear?
No. I mean, he knew, depending upon the distance that the target was, that he just had to throw it a certain, with a certain amount of force, or hold a certain amount above that target. And I
Right.
think that if you can practice enough and visualize enough, we've all read with winning in mind. If you can visualize that hit, that you're just gonna hit.
I think that's great advice. Well, guys, I'm excited to share this with the 3-gun community. We truly have found the perfect zero, and I want to thank you for being a part of this.
Yeah,
podcast.
and I'm actually really, really excited that we don't have to talk about it on forums or Facebook groups anymore. I think it's we can move on to other things now that are more important.
I'm very relieved because the double life was really the hardest part.
Yeah.
And now I just wanted to share it with the world, and we finally got the chance. So
I'm going to go shout it through the halls of Vortex.
You want to go right now?
Let's do it.
If you are finished, unload, show clear.
All right, if you've listened this far, you are either passively punching data into your ballistics app while you're listening and checking our math, and you figured out that this was an April Fool's joke. That's right, there is no perfect zero in 3-gun. As with most things in life, the answer is to do what's right for you. Generally, I go with a 50-yard zero because I'm guaranteed at least 50 yards when I go to a zero bay at a major match. But part of this story is true. Reuben and I did go out to shoot with one of his scopes on my rifle at the Vortex farm, and we got a hasty zero at a 140-yard target. And then we were ringing steel out to like 860 or so. So all that really proves is that the bullet doesn't lie, and you just need to do all the other work necessary to make sure that you get those hits yourself, which includes the chrono, the research into your barrel length, your twist, all the stuff that goes into your ballistics app. The podcast will be back on Wednesday next week. So in the meantime, happy 3-Gun Show 4-year anniversary to you. Thank you for sticking in with me over this run, and I'll see you on the range.